Hello, and welcome to this Christian Walk podcast, the show where no topic is too taboo to empower you on your walk with God. I'm your host, Marley B., and it is my privilege to welcome you back to the conversation. And today's conversation is one you won't hear too much in a Christian conversation because a lot of times they shut it out as just being demonic or just not of God. But I'm hoping to change that narrative today when I invited my guest, Kristina, who is an astrologer and has dedicated her life to using that tool to help people unlock things that will help them in this life and possibly even the next. So it was a great conversation. We're talking astrology today. Let's get into it right now.
Walk with me, talk with me. What you know about God? Will He ride with me? Come and open my eyes for me. Hear my story. Show me more what's in store. And once more, listen, homie, can you walk?
So, Kristina, welcome to this Christian Walk podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. So happy to be here and talk to you today.
Thank you. We are talking about something, on this show, we don't stray away from taboo topics, right? And I feel like this topic has a lot of taboo on it. And I just want to go straight to it because we're going to be talking about astrology today.
Yep.
All right. And you have made astrology your business.
Mm-hmm. Yep, whole time. Quit the job and everything.
Right. That's amazing. And I know how it is stepping out on faith. You know what I'm saying? And I know how it can be really scary and really exhilarating at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing. You're stepping out on faith. But what made you, like, let's talk about how you got into astrology in the first place. Like, because you were in a totally different field. What field were you in before you took this leap?
Yes, I was working within arts education for the past 6 years. So mainly working with teens in New York City with after school, arts opportunities. So a lot of the time they were coming to us and, we did a lot of recruiting and outreach. And yeah, so I was mainly working with teenagers, very different, very different than what I'm doing now. But I'm starting to see some parallels with what I was doing within that job and, the way I am conducting my business right now and the way that I want to reach people. Mainly that's connecting and building relationships. And that's really at the forefront of my mission right now as an astrologer.
Wow. So do you feel that part of your life have prepared you for this part that you're stepping into?
Yeah, it did. And it's so funny because the whole time while I was still, in that role, I was just like, well, this is going to be a complete, shift and career change. And there may be people that don't understand it or like, how did that happen? And then once, I'm only like in week 3 of doing this full time, but I'm starting, again, like just seeing the parallels of the two. And, I'm working with a coach right now, just on the business side of things on, how do I do this? Because I've never really branded myself before, or, I've always been working for a brand or working for a company and communicating their mission. So now that it's specifically coming from me, there's a lot of, we speak about faith and like, there's so much faith I have to have, within myself in order to really, do the job that I want to do and to be able to really connect with people the way that I want to, and for people to really see me for who I am. And so I'm not hiding behind, a screen anymore of like using my old jobs, Instagram to post or, connecting with people on social media. Now it's just my face and my voice. So yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking, but at the same time,
does it make you feel free or terrified?
A mix of both, which I kind of like. It's really exciting. I've always I've always had pretty strong faith and something that I wanted to do. It was almost, maybe it always was like a higher calling or just kind of like this shift in my mind of like, no, this is what I really want. And as long as it's in good faith and as long as it's not in harm of anyone else. And, if I can full on go and move towards whatever this dream or this goal is, and it's something that's beneficial for me, like I'm going to see it through. And I've always had that since I was a child. So, I don't come from a family from entrepreneurs. Most of my family members have been working for a company or organization. So I was kind of, and in some way I felt alone in this experience. So I've been trying to connect with people that have been doing this either for a long time, or maybe there's people that have been starting out like me. And it doesn't really matter to me that they're not in the same line of work that I'm doing, but the idea of, I think that's where we connected too, of like really, having that leap of faith and diving into something that we know is what we're meant to do, and, part of our life purpose. I love connecting with people that have that same mentality. And so that's something that I've been doing right now consciously, of just trying to make those connections, and to gain that support system, because it's so important.
Absolutely. The support system is real. And then especially when you do something that's not really common, it's one thing to say, hey, I'm going to stop doing one job to get another job. It's another thing to even say, I'm going to stop being in law and go to med school, or even go to hair school. So people know that that's something that's like, okay, I can see how that can be, rewarding. I can see how it can be financially savvy. I can see all those things. But when you leap out into something where people can't really see it off the rip, and they just don't know, and we have to be real about, we know very little about astrology. Like, and I'm telling you, you're talking to a championship Leo right here. Like, anybody that know me know I'm a super Leo. When it's Leo season, I got like 1 million shirts that I get made. It's Leo season, and I get my friends to be like, oh my God, like, okay, we get it, you're a Leo, but I love to do it. Like, I love to step out and throw up my sun sign, but it's very limited on what I know about, about astrology, even though I rock real hard as a Leo, but it's so much more than just that sun sign, which when we first had our first conversation and you was telling me, like, I'm leaving this job to go and do astrology. At first, and then I'm somebody who left a perfectly good career to go and do a podcast. And my eyebrow went up like, really? So tell me about, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, tell me about that. And then you were telling me how, you really were drawn to it after you had the experience yourself. And I'm like, okay, that just made me very curious about it, which is why, I agreed to have my birth chart read. Right. And you did that for me. What was it, last week? It was it was just a week ago. And I didn't really go in with much expectation. I just went in like, okay, a part of me always wanted to have like a little, and then this is going to be my ignorance coming out, like a reading, like a tarot card, or maybe even a psychic maybe thing. I always wanted to try it, like something along that line. But I was so ignorant to the craft of it that it was all one and the same to me. Like, I can just go ahead and call it psychic, and that would entail tarot. And I wasn't even thinking birth chart at the time. It's just how limited my information was about it. And I'm like, okay, I went in with no expectation, but never in a million years that could I have imagined how great it would be for me. Like, had I, and I know it's a lot of people holding on to real negative thoughts when it comes to astrology. They think it's a demonic, they think it's witchcraft. I've heard all kinds of stuff. As I've been preparing for this, I looked up a little bit more stuff, and this is like, wow, people are just like flat out like Bobby Boucher's mama is the devil, right? And it's just like, wow. I mean, it and then it's like, when having experienced the reading, that just can't be true. You know what I'm saying? Is there some people out there, and I think, Whoopi Goldberg on Ghost messed it up for a lot of people, talking about, Molly, you in trouble, girl. Like, when you think about stuff like that, it's like, we knew that was made up and all that, even though she ended up being real by the end. But, that kind of put that stigma on the craft of it. And it's like, once again, we couple it all together, psychic, astrology, when that shouldn't be the case all the time. right? So when you, what caused you to step out and pursue astrology just for your personal use before getting into
Yeah,
the professional side? Just personally, how did you start that?
that's a good question. So I would say, as far as astrology, like my experience and my knowledge of it was very minimal too. So I'm glad that you mentioned like Leo being your sun sign, right? Because that's the sign that we all pretty much know of ourselves. Like you just know your birthday and it's within a season and boom, like
That's it. I know astrology.
right. We know other, you're Leo, I'm a Taurus. So like once I know other Tauruses, I'm like, oh my gosh, like we're connected, we're this and that. So I think it really started with my mother. So she's also a Taurus and my brother's also a Taurus. So my mom has very just like diehard Taurus energy. And I think it was something for us to bond over from childhood. And so then, it became like the little jewelry with like the Taurus symbol on it. Then it turned into the books. Then it turned into, little things started piquing my interest, but I still for a long time didn't really dive into it. I would say, and as for most people that go through like a transformational period, it's like you either let go from your job or you're going through a breakup or, something like that. So it was about, I would say 5.5 years ago. I had went through an intense breakup, but also I think what that relationship had taught me was that I was very much allowing to like mold and shape myself into something that someone else had like wanted, not really who I was. And so I kind of felt like a loss of identity at that time, especially when it was over, because it was someone that I was also friends with. So it felt very, traumatic and dramatic and all the things. And so I think I was just yearning for figuring myself out and trying to like understand myself. I think on a deeper level too, there were some things, when we're in relation with someone else, we have our high vibrational side of us, and then we also have our shadow side that comes up, right? So when we're triggered or our insecurities are kind of poked at. And so for me, what came up for me at that time was my lack of assertiveness, and standing up for myself. And I used to put myself down so much. It's like you can really just be your biggest bully sometimes, and you're not even
we're very critical of ourselves.
Right? We don't even realize we're doing it sometimes until I started speaking to someone else about it. I've never done traditional therapy, but I was very inclined with wanting to speak to people that were very in touch with their spirituality, or, people that were just confident and had like this knowing of who they were. And so I started putting myself in spaces where, your identity was celebrated and what you have to offer to yourself and to the world is celebrated. And that was really finding community. And so I really started off with like meditation. And then I loved anything that I can like put my hands on. So crystals and things like that. And knowing that they have these healing properties. Even when, so I come from a Roman Catholic background with my family, my grandma, going to church every Sunday, Easter, we would go to mass, that was very much within my childhood. Even when I found myself in places of worship, I started shifting my mindset of like, oh man, it's Sunday morning. Like, okay, we got to do this. Or so just like, what does this really mean for me right now? Like this is a space that we're all, and I think that's something that I really valued, of just being in a space with other people, being in this collective of like, hey, we're all just trying to be in touch with God, being in touch with the universe, trying to find, our higher purpose, our life purpose, right? And so I started shifting my perspective and my mindset whenever I entered a space like that. And so then with astrology, I think I was looking for answers too at the time, or just, again, like trying to understand myself more, not necessarily try to fix the things that I didn't like about myself, but it was more so like, why do I respond in this way?
What made you seek the answers through astrology? Like what made you go that
Yeah.
way for the answers.
I think I liked the fact that astrology, there's all these different archetypes, right? So when you mentioned like you're a Leo, and Leo's very much, when Leo season comes around, it's like, ooh, I'm here, I'm loud and I'm proud, and like I want to
'Tis the
celebrate
season
me,
to be
right?
turning. Yes.
Yes. And I loved that. And then when I found out, I think just as I was trying to learn more and learn more, and I think I was in that phase of wanting to be a student, because I in traditional like academia, I wasn't the best student. I got good grades, but I feel like I kind of just got by. I didn't really invest my time and my energy and my learning.
Been there. I definitely identify with that.
And so when it came to this time, I really wanted to be a student, and I really wanted to just like soak it all in and learn as much as I could. And so at that point, the way that I was also looking at astrology was way different than I was maybe even a year before. And I was like, well, there's way more to this. And every time I would be in Barnes and Noble looking at books, and once I saw the chart for the first time, I was like, what in the world is this? So I was like, okay, there's like degrees, there's math involved. Like there's no way I'm ever going to understand it. So I was already limiting myself before I even tried, and so at that point in my life, where I was learning, I was like, you know what, I'm not going to allow this to be something that I'm already kind of accepting failure, or I'm accepting the fact that I can't learn this. Like I want to be really open, and I just want to dive in and see what I find out. So I started reading a lot of books, and books were really, informative, and they gave a lot of information, but also it's just like, I really feel like I need to talk to somebody and just have like a professional reading. I know there's people that do this. And so I reached out to somebody that I was also really intentional about who I was following on Instagram. And so
I was about to say, how did you find, because there's so many people that's sending out, hey, I'll do your birth chart. How did you figure out, okay, this is the person that I can trust to do this? I'm glad that I had the opportunity to talk to you, and you are actually my dear cousin's girlfriend, so I trust him. I'm like, well, she's not a crazy person, so I can trust Kristina to do it. But it's hard to just be able to open yourself that vulnerable to somebody you didn't get the opportunity to talk to. How did you pick that person?
So actually my first reading, I think I blocked it out because it wasn't a good experience, to be honest. And there's this space in Brooklyn where astrologers or people in other professions within healing or spirituality, they can like book a space and have appointments for, they can do it 5 days a week, or they come in once a week and they have appointments. It's really up to them. And so I just went on their website, and I looked at all of the astrologers that work with that space. And there was one person that I don't know, I felt connected to her. She was from a Latinx background, just like I am. And, I was like, okay, maybe I think she's from Brooklyn as well. So I kind of went off of those commonalities, and I don't know, I liked her photo, and I was like, she seems nice, let me see what this is about. Right. And so I went there, and I did it it was for my birthday that year. And the first thing was that she had double booked that day. So she actually couldn't do my reading on my birthday. It probably should have been a sign for me to be like, okay.
Right.
But she was nice. She like offered other things because she felt bad. I was like, okay, I'm going to give her a chance. I'm just going to see, I already paid for it, whatever. Eventually I went back. And so
did you pay?
I'm trying to remember. It might've been close to 100. I want to say, or like in the low 100. There's been a range, and I'll definitely tell you how much I paid for a reading. I've probably had about close to 7 or 8 readings from different astrologers at this point. And so then I went in, we finally figured out a date, and we sat in this room, and she just kind of had her laptop up, and she was just reading off of her computer, which was fine. But I felt like there wasn't this element of connection at all. Like she really didn't care that much about who I was and what, why I think she might've asked me why I'm here. And I explained it was my birthday, and she asked me what I wanted to focus on. And I had said love at the time. And we kind of went into it. And one of my placements, when she was looking at my chart about love, she was just like, oh, well, you just need to be prepared to be heartbroken, like a lot. Right. And
And
I
it's
was
like, dang, are you on Google? What are you doing on that laptop? Like, what? How can you be so
yeah.
sure?
And I was just like, that is the opposite of what I wanted to hear or what I needed to hear at that time, right? This was already a year after, the hard breakup that I had. I was still single, but I was just open to possibilities of just wanting to know more, again, learn more about myself on how I can connect with people. And when I heard that, I mean, of course, that's disheartening. Who wants to hear, oh, you just have a future of being heartbroken? Like, why would
Like,
I?
get ready.
Right. And I left there not feeling so great again about myself. Right. So now I'm in this weird space of, well, I leaned toward this, astrology as a tool of self-development and, just to learn about me. But then I'm hearing this awful thing, like about my future or just like a pattern that she sees like within my life. But I didn't let that discourage me because I knew I was like, I just didn't feel something was off with that connection. I didn't feel it. And I know there's tons of other people that still do this work and, will do it differently. So I was still very open.
And so you were still feeling at this point that astrology was the way. Did you ever stray away from it in that moment? Like, this is a crock. Did you have that moment like, this is just not real? This can't, did you feel like, okay, because at this point you were on your first reading or your second reading?
This is my first reading ever.
This is the first one. Oh, okay. Yeah. So you just like, it didn't just off put you. You still had the feeling like this, I believe this might be it.
You know what it was? I think that I knew in that moment, it validated my insecurity about myself, right?
You had to be real about what you did, what you didn't want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Validated that part, that little voice in my head that was telling me I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy of love. Right. But I knew because I already had put in so much work. This is already a year into, investing in me, that I already had gained enough confidence to know that this isn't part of my story. Right. Like, this doesn't define me. Maybe I will experience heartbreak, but that doesn't define who I am.
That doesn't mean your life is heartbreak.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you have to experience
how I love people, right? Or how people show me love, So I was hopeful still. And I really knew that she didn't take as much care as she probably should have within that reading. Especially, because the way that I think about astrology, like, and now with all the experiences that I've had and, the way that I conduct my readings with clients is like, you have to be really mindful of who these people are and where they're coming from and what their experiences are. And it is not my place at all to validate a part of you that is not feeling worthy. That is not my job. And I do not ever want to make someone feel that way at all. I want to uplift. I want people to feel great about themselves. I want people to feel more understood, and that's the way that I like to look at astrology. That's the way I like to conduct astrology. And every other reading since then that I've received has been that and times 100. And so the next reading that I had, I was very conscious about who was going to give me this reading, right? And the funniest thing is that I never met this person face to face. We're still in contact. This is now about 2 or 3 years ago that I had my reading with her. Her name is Lindsay. And she lives on the other side of the country. Even when our readings, we didn't even do it in person. We didn't even do it on Zoom. We did it over the phone. And I had never at that moment felt so connected to a stranger before in my life. I felt like she really saw me and
Where was she at?
She lives in Santa Barbara. And I just stumbled upon her Instagram one day. And I think I followed her on Instagram for a good 5 to 6 months before I reached out to her. And it was really just about her content that she was putting out. I read her website a few times, and this reading was like double the amount that I got the first time around, right? But at that point, I just believed in her, and I believed in like the way she talked about astrology. And at that point, I was still a student. I was still learning on my own time. And I just felt really connected to her. And I was like, you know what, she's the one, like, she's the next person that I'm gonna get a reading from. And I just know I have this feeling inside of me. My intuition was like peaked at that moment. I was like, I know that she is going to give this reading.
Lighten this darkness that I feel like I'm in.
Yeah. And she's gonna change my life. I just knew it. And I was 100% right. I was 100% right. That reading was, I think, it might have been an hour of just being on the phone. And I remember hanging up and just feeling like I could take a breath. Like, that's exactly, she told me everything that I wanted to hear. And more, and I told her, that part of me, the lack of assertiveness or not feeling worthy sometimes of love or standing up for myself. And then she would just ask me questions to, the thing with astrology is that you already have all the answers within you, right? So when someone is giving you a reading and they're bringing things up, it's like, oh, I was just thinking about this the other day, or like, oh, I do that,
Yeah.
And there's just like this knowingness that we all have already. And it's just, it's having someone kind of guide you through that experience and, through those little things
give you that opportunity to really talk it out.
Yes, exactly.
To really talk it out, because, and it is based off your experience. I noticed that. I was just like, wow, this is like, it was a lot of things that was just like, I was just thinking about this, or I feel like God was just putting this on my heart, and it was like based off of the reading that I was in. So I get that 100%.
Yeah.
Now, when you say, and I want to be clear on this part, because you'll have some people that look at this and they'll say, well, she said that she found the right person because that person said what she wanted to hear. It wasn't so much of, oh, she told me all good news, so this got to be, she got to be legit. When you say she told me what I wanted to hear, what did you mean by that?
Yeah, and it wasn't just good stuff. But she handled, there were things that I knew about myself that I'm just like, oh, it's not my best trait. But, and a lot of it had to do with, I can be a little impulsive sometimes. I don't really think things through before I take action. And even when I'm stepping into a room or a space, the part about my, lack of assertiveness, she was like, well, she's like, within a team setting, she's like, what role do you feel like you usually take? And I told her, I'm like, off the bat, mostly like the peacemaker, if there's kind of strong personalities that are going back and forth, blah, 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 blah. I'm the one that kind of calms down the energy, but I'm like, but I want to be that person that, is bantering back and forth. And then she's just like, why is it wrong for you? Like, why do you feel like it's wrong for you to be the peacemaker in the group? She's like, if not you, then who? Like, who would be that person? And so she just allowed me to kind of self-assess on my own, and also, and accept, what my role is, in those spaces, in those situations. So when I say that she told me exactly what I wanted to hear, she told me all the things that I knew that I kind of chuckle, or like, not the best like qualities, but she also like gave me the light of each of those like shadow things that came up, right? She said, okay, yeah, maybe you are this way, but also like, what's the beautiful thing about it? Like, what's the other side of that coin, right? There's light and darkness, within each of us, and how that plays out within our lives. We're human, at the end of the day. And so
she basically changed your perspective about you. Yeah. And I remember one of the things you first told me about astrology, that it's a tool of self-awareness. And that's what really had me intrigued, because self-awareness is like my jam. I really like to, I mean, and what I found out in life is that learning yourself is going to be the hardest thing you ever do. Like, you can sit and read and learn about somebody else, and that'll be easier than trying to really pull yourself apart and really learn yourself. And so when you start out on that journey, it's not something that's going to take a couple days or a few months or even a few years. it's a real
Yep.
journey. And so when you said that this was a tool of self-awareness, it helps you to just really look at yourself, your true characteristics, like that were put in you based off of what the stars say the day when you was born. I was just like, really? And I'm like, okay, how can that day 42 years ago really count to now when you think, people evolve, people change. And it's like, am I really evolving to be who I was supposed to be at the day that I was born? Is that how that works? Like, please explain how looking at the day that the stars on the day that you were born can help a grown person today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So something, just to give like really, basic kind of
Please keep it basic for us.
Astrology 101. So as we already established, like our sun sign, usually the sign that we all pretty much know about ourselves, and it's really easy to figure out. And then there's also our moon sign and our rising sign. So those are called the big three. And this is like very basic knowledge of astrology. It's very mainstream now, I would say on social media and things like that. So your moon sign is representing your emotions, right? What is emotionally nurturing to you and what your physical needs are. So emotional and physical needs, but it's also who you are mostly from birth to your childhood. And this will always be with you. This is always your inner child. So the times that we're triggered, when we're sad, something that brings us joy, that's touching our moon sign. So I always say, and we said this during your reading, like if there are moments where we're going to wake up, all of us will wake up at some point this week and we're not feeling ourselves, right? Like we're just, something feels off. Maybe something's not actually wrong, but something just may feel off. And so you can always look to your moon sign and how to emotionally regulate yourself, right? You could always look to your moon sign if you're about to step into a very uncomfortable conversation with somebody. You can always go to your moon sign of, what do I need right now so that I feel safe within my own body, I feel secure, and I feel prepared to step into this uncomfortable situation that I really don't want to do, but I know it's important, right? So from childhood all the way to adulthood, that is something that, a tool, just like you said, that we can always use throughout every day. So the moon changes signs every 2.5 days. And so that, think about our emotions. Our emotions can ebb and flow into all different things depending on what happens in our day, right?
Absolutely.
And it's constantly changing, and so are we. And so I think that's something that it's a tool that we can use, that we can always kind of rely on to,
like,
again,
oh, I'm not feeling right. My moon must be really on tilt right now. Like, I really
like I'm
really,
just, I'm feeling triggered right now. I'm feeling, I don't feel safe within my own body right now. How do I come home to myself? Right. So that's how you can always reference the moon as you coming home to yourself. Because there are a lot of times where we're acting out from a space of like, I have a to-do list. I have things that I need to do with work. I need to do things at home. I need to do, family, or, meeting up with friends, or whatever it is. There's so many external factors that are constantly going on, sometimes all happening at once, right? No one else is going to remind us, oh, did you breathe today, Marlena? Like, did you take a moment for yourself today? Maybe, but it's not going to be every day, or it's not going to be every hour. Someone's going to ask you that. And it's also kind of annoying, right? But we have to ask ourselves that question, like, did I take a moment?
What's going on with me?
Yeah, what's going on here, right? What do I need right now? And that's something that I think a lot of us fail to do, because we're constantly on the move of needing to get things done, or worrying about, it's very easy to focus on other people and worry about other people and their problems than focus on ourselves, right?
And how much would that avoid people going into stuff that's just not good for them, like emotional eating, depression, or just, get into a state where you just can't move? People would just, when you're having a bad day, it's some people that just like, let me just lay it down and just scratch this day and just try it again tomorrow. But if I could tell myself, okay, what do I need? And based off of what I've learned about myself through using the tool of astrology, give myself that so that I can straighten up and collect a lot more days that I would have wasted had I not known myself that well. I think that right there is worth giving it a try.
Yeah. And it's a
you
practice
know,
too, right? To kind of, because it could almost be seen as selfish that you're putting in so much time for yourself.
for
Right?
yourself.
Yeah. It can be misconstrued as selfish behavior, but is it? Because with me fulfilling and nurturing myself, right? Before I even step into another space, I'm making sure that I feel safe and secure, and I am showing up as my best self for me and for you in this situation, right? And that's something that we need to be reminded of sometimes. But I think like astrology is a great practice on, okay, right now, this is kind of what I need for myself today. How do I emotionally regulate? And then the other thing is your rising sign. So this ultimately is your motivation for living on this earth, right? And so that shows up, that could be in completely different sign than your sun sign is. And the same thing goes for your moon. Your moon can be a completely different sign than what your sun sign is, right? And the things that you thought you knew about yourself. But
exactly.
As you know from your reading, like there are so many layers to you. And
there are very many. And you know, I feel a little conflicted because I'm so quick to be like, well, I'm a Leo and that's just what it is. Then I come out and find out, okay, that's my sun sign, then my moon sign is Aquarius. And I don't really know what to do with that. Like, I don't know. I can't just, it's just a trip how we will hang on to that one sun sign and think that's who we are. And then astrology tells us better than anything else that we have more layers. We're not just one thing. We have so many layers.
Beings. We are complex beings. You know,
I'm full of planets.
Yeah, you are. You are. We all are. And that's a thing of looking at, the astrological wheel, the chart is that when I first learned, I'm like, oh, wait, I actually have all 12 signs.
All 12, right?
Within me, but they show up in different areas of my life. Mind blown.
That's a lot.
Mind blown, right? And so kind of going back to your question about how can, an adult use this as like a way of, evolution or transforming themselves throughout life. I think the most funny aha moment that I had during a reading. So this was with my dear friend. His name is Colin Bedell. And he really combines, in such a beautiful way, combines psychology and astrology together. And so when we're talking about like a specific, we call them transits. So all the planets move. Right now they're moving. Currently, they're all moving into different signs at some point. And so we're talking about like right now we have Venus, the planet Venus, love, beauty, finances, self-worth, move into Scorpio. And Scorpio can be a really intense sign. It's a water sign. And so when we're talking about those elements together, he brought up the subject around trust. And so in his whole video that he put out on Instagram, he just mentioned, yes, we're in Venus and Scorpio. We're going to talk about trust today. And he backed up everything that he thought about trust with studies that he just read about, learned about, digested, and he shared it with his audience. It is such a beautiful way to show that all these, other elements, things that are, I guess, more mainstream or more accepted, like psychology, right? Psychologists, therapists, psychiatrists, right? That's a pretty well-known conventional job to have, where people seek out that counsel. The fact that he does such a beautiful way of tying these two things together. You don't have to actually know anything about astrology when you watch his videos or you hear him talk, because he's more so focusing on the psychology of it all rather than just talking about the planets and blah, 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 And so usually it's always been his videos that I'll send out to like family members or whoever. I'm just like, you know what? I know you don't know much about it, but I think you'll get a lot from this video. And they'll always come back to me and be like, that was amazing.
Because he just translated to life. Right. And that's what we need to see it as, the translation to life.
It is. He does such a beautiful job with that. And something that so my aha moment when I had my first reading with him a few years ago, So my moon sign is Aries. So for anyone who's watching who is an Aries sun, you may relate to this of, Aries is trailblazer, pioneer, a go-getter, can be a leader, sometimes be too impulsive. So when it comes to things that are emotionally regulating for me, I tend to lean towards more like, especially when it comes to exercise, like I'll lean to like a HIIT class or something that's really high intensity.
Yeah.
Because I need to exert my energy in that way. Or sometimes if I do need something, that will emotionally nurture me, I don't even think twice about it. I just do it. I just go after whatever it is that I want. And then when it comes to my rising sign, so my motivation for living on this earth, it's the opposite sign, Libra, which is the scales. So this is balance here. Not always being direct, always looking at two sides of the coin, looking at both sides of a situation before making a decision. And so for me growing up, this is from childhood, right? My moon sign, Aries. I have a lot of Aries placements too, different planets in Aries. And so I've always had this perception of my life that when I achieve my goals, when I am successful, I will have gotten there on my own, right? That's always what my mindset was. Even from a child, I thought this, I'm gonna have my own apartment, I'm gonna have my own pet, I'm gonna have like all of my own business. It was always mine, mine, mine. It's my thing. And I did it by myself, right? When he looked at my chart, he told me, he's like, do you know that your destiny within this life is partnership and collaboration? And I looked at him and I was like, what? He blew my mind. He was like, yeah, he's like, part of your destiny is to be in partnership. He's like, doesn't necessarily mean just marriage or whatever. He's like, but you're meant to collaborate with someone or maybe a few people and create something really beautiful. And I was just like, there's just no way. I'm like, there's no way. Like at that point, I still was single, still like hadn't experienced, another relationship, only had that one relationship that, turned my world upside down at the time.
Right.
And I was like, there
definitely wasn't trying to go back that route.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't need a man. Like, I'm going to do this all on my own. Right. Joke's on me. Cause then a few months later, your cousin and I decide to be in a relationship with each other, right?
And do you feel more powerful now that you're in line with what, according to your reading? You know what I'm saying? So it's because that was like, let's be clear, just like with, you can have in mind what it is that you want to do, or you can be in line with what the stars say. You know what I'm saying? That you're meant to do and what things that will come natural to you. Do you feel like now that you're not going against it, following what you thought and going in line with what he thought, what was the difference in that for you?
So I think I wouldn't say that my mindset completely shifted where I was like, okay, well now I need to be in a relationship,
it's
right?
Time.
Right? Like, oh, now I need to go on like 50 dates to like find the one because this is my destiny. It wasn't that at all. I was still very much like, all right, let's see how it goes. Like I'm still going to do this whole thing by myself because that's all I have right now. But if someone comes along, and I think this was the difference, is that for a long time, I wasn't open to receiving love, romantic love from somebody, right? Which is probably why I ended up in the situations that I did, for the last few years at that point. But I, at that point, had definitely put the intention set the intention, I should say, that I'm open to receiving whatever it is God, the universe wants to give me and bestow on me, as long as it's for my higher good. That's all I said. I put that out there.
Wow. And that was an acceptance out loud.
Yeah.
That's important. Say it out loud. Don't just think it.
Yeah. Say it out loud. And then all of a sudden, I have someone in my life who is a creative, all the things that I was insecure about for myself. Yeah. I found it very hard to call myself an artist at that time. I felt it really hard to call myself a creative. And then all of a sudden, someone comes into my life who is all the things that I always aspired to be or to claim within myself, because it was always already there. He didn't push me to do anything. He was just there. He was just a being in my life that inspired me to, wow, like I can do all the things that he made it seem real and attainable. I think that's really what it was. And again, that kind of goes back to the beginning of my journey of where I was just trying to immerse myself in a community, and people that were working on themselves or wanting to understand themselves and being more in touch with spirit. And so now, to have someone in my life who was already working for himself, was already, claiming artistry, claiming creativity as his own, and would just create. I think that was something that blew my mind, was that a lot of people talk about their dreams and what they want to do down the line and blah, blah, blah.
He can make it happen.
Right. And all of a sudden he wouldn't even talk about it. Like that's the thing. All of a sudden it just happened. And I was like, wait, are you a magician? I was like, what? Right. How did you just make this thing happen? And I think just being, around that type of energy was just, it changed everything for me. And it ultimately is a huge reason as to why I am where I am right now, is because at that point, then I even made it more of a conscious decision. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I, got rid of all of my old friends or anything like that. A lot of my friends are, definitely creatives and people that I've been, that I love and I've had in my life for a long time. But I was definitely a lot more conscious of like who I was surrounding myself with. And just
matters. It matters a lot.
It does. And not around conversation or mentality of like, this is something I might do one day. Cause that's kind of where I was like, eventually this is going to happen.
Maybe one day.
Right. And I just like, no, I want to be in a room where people are just doing it. Right. Yeah. Like they're not even questioning anything. And maybe they do have fears, right? Maybe they do have these fears. I mean, we all do. A lot of, I'm sure some of the most successful, entrepreneurs in this life, artists, creatives, whatever you want to call them, they still have their fears, right? But they don't let that one define them. They don't let that take over their mind or their energy, and they still produce, they still create, they still put themselves out there.
And speaking of fears, I'm glad that you spoke of fears, right? Because I want to get, as we wind down here, I want to get a couple of things out as regards to fear. First, one thing, I want to ask you a personal question, right? Yeah. So, with this being this Christian walk, right? I would be remiss if I didn't ask you. I know you mentioned being raised Catholic. I know that sometimes spirituality and religion can change as we get older. As you are, well, how old are you now, Kristina?
How old am I? Mm-hmm. Oh, 29.
Okay, so are you still a believer?
A
believer in God or in Jesus Christ, or how do you are you a believer in that aspect? What do you believe?
Yeah. I do believe in God and Jesus. I can't say that I go to church every Sunday. I'm not, I don't put in all that effort. Okay. That probably family, my family, older family has or still does. But
that's fine. There's no judgment about how frequently you go or, anything like that. If you believe, that's good enough around here. So that's all I wanted I wanted to put that out there. One, to make the point of, because a lot of times people automatically think that astrology and things of that nature is witchcraft and things of that nature, and that you can't really believe in God and believe in astrology. One thing that kept me open to the idea of getting a reading, at the end of the day, the 3 wise men found Jesus using astrology.
Using astrology, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it was just like, well, and that was an important time. Like, had they not known that, you would have missed the biggest ticket in the history of the world. They was there for it, And so that right there made me be like, okay, this can't be that. And to drop the negative connection that negative taboo that people want to put on astrology, right?
Yeah.
So that kept that open. I'm glad that you're a believer as someone who does readings, because
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that's important to put out there for people who may be interested in getting one. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? A person of faith can guide you in this, using this tool of self-awareness that was put here at the beginning of time, that helped
Mm-hmm.
us in our faith to have a really important moment in our faith.
Yeah.
You know, and that same tool is here for us to use today, as we sit here all the time wondering, who am I? What should I be? Which way should I go? And you know, it's so many people wonder, at all different walks of life, that are wondering this, right? And
Mm.
I just want to ask you, what do you think are give us 3 ideal times in life that you think is a good time, like to seek a reading, if you're, you know, at a point where you're just like, what is a good time that I might consider a reading if I never did it? Because you know, you have those people that want to do it for entertainment purposes,
Yeah.
or just to see, like with me, it was just to see, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but if you're at a point, and give me 3 points where a person would say, okay, this might be a great time to have this reading.
Yeah. I would say if you are in, when it's felt the most supportive to me, when I was in a transitional phase within my life, I felt like a lot of changes were happening. And I just feel like I needed something, I needed to be rooted within something, with a knowing, or, you know, and I needed guidance and support. So I would say a transitional phase within your life, say you're making a major move, or you're even contemplating a major move, you know, moving homes, or maybe switching jobs. Maybe it is phasing out of a relationship, and, you know, embarking on this journey, you know, being single again. I would say, yeah, big transitional phases would probably be a feeling of the most supported during that time to receive a reading. I would say another reason would be, a lot of people, and when we talked about your chart, right, and I mentioned just 2 different houses, one house that focuses on work, and I told you it's not necessarily career, but it's the work that you do.
Yeah.
And then there's another house that is specifically career. So I think a lot of times, you know, we put ourselves in positions of for financial reasons, we need to make money, right? But not necessarily that job is very fulfilling, you know, emotionally. And people are really inclined to want to know what my life purpose is. Maybe your life purpose does have to do with work or your career. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's, you know, for me, I knew that my life purpose was to be of service to others, and how that showed up, I was open to. And I think that it's definitely shown up in different ways, you know, already within my life. So far, it's been with work, with, like, you know, working in arts education, being of service to young people, to youth. And now within astrology, my mission is to be of service to the collective and, you know, individual people that want to work on their self-development and their self-awareness. And I think it's such a beautiful thing when we give ourselves a break, right? And we just take some time to really understand ourselves. That is a form of self-care to me, and self-love. And so, yeah, if you're wanting to learn a little bit more about what your life purpose is, or it could just be anything that comes up for you where you feel like you can receive a little bit more guidance or support, like, I would love to be a part of that journey, and helping you, you know, figure that out for yourself. Because ultimately, I don't have all the answers. You have all the answers within
They're
you.
already inside you, but you can guide it. You can help
Mhm.
people guide people through the weeds that is ourselves, with all of our layers and our planets that are
Mhm.
within us. Right?
Yeah,
That is beautiful. So if someone wanted to reach out to you to schedule a reading or read up a little bit more about the services that you offer,
sure.
go ahead and drop
Yeah.
that information.
Thank you. So yeah, I have a website. It's 92 scales, the numbers 9 and 2 scales.com. And quick little backstory on why that is. I was born in 1992. I'm a Libra rising. It's the symbol is a scale. So it just kind of came to me one day. It was just something that popped up and I thought it sounded cool. So that I went with it. So 92 scales, you can see my offerings and you can learn a little bit more about me. And I also use Instagram a lot. So that's a great way to connect with me. It's my name, just Kristina Gonzalez, Kristina with a K, Gonzalez with 2 Z's, and then underscore. So Kristina Gonzalez underscore. And you can find me on Instagram. We can chat. I love meeting new people. And definitely, being able to have discussions like this. I mean, this is something I would say, like, I'm only in week 3, of being an entrepreneur. But this is definitely one of the coolest things that I've been asked to be a part of and asked to do. So thank you, Marlena, so much for like having me here. I think I also had misconceptions as well, because I do know, people within, religious communities that don't really see astrology as something that is, of good faith, or, something that you should be even interested in. And so I kind of made a misconception myself of like who my clients would be. And I didn't think that, someone who went to church or, had strong faith would want to have a reading from me. And so I'm so grateful that, we got to meet and have that initial conversation and that you were interested in having that reading. So it definitely opened up my perspective and my eyes to that as well. And I think it can also for people within the astrology community that may have grown up, being in the church and kind of strayed away from that because maybe they didn't feel accepted at the time. And I do know a lot of stories of people kind of leaning towards, other forms of spirituality for acceptance. So I hope this kind of opens that conversation for both sides of people that may stray a little bit more, towards their religion and church, and maybe a little bit more towards astrology, that you can have both. And I think that's a really important conversation to have. So thank you.
No doubt. Thank you. Thank you for joining the conversation. Thank you for coming on TCW. Thank you for being bold enough to step out on faith to do and offer this service that people need in this time. I think if we embrace self-awareness as a society more often, we'll all be the better for it. So thank you for the work you're committed to. I wish you great success. And as we go towards stepping on the status quo together, I look forward to great things, minds opening, because people with the closed-mindedness of faith condemning and people condemning faith, or closing our mind to the idea of what can coexist and what can't, it's time over for that.
Yeah.
So cheers to the information age. Cheers to you. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristina, for being on TCW today, sharing your craft with us, and explaining how astrology is not just for knowing your number 1 birthday sign. It's about knowing who you are inside, and not only who you are inside, who you were meant to be based off of what God set the stars in line to say on the day you were born. If you like this content, please like it, please share it, and definitely please subscribe to my channel. And also you can listen to us on iHeart Radio as well as on Apple Podcasts. So today we tried our best to open your mind a little bit as it relates to astrology. It's not just about knowing, where to get in on a Luke song. It's about knowing who you are inside. And with Kristina's perspective, we were able to see that it's a tool that's here about self-awareness. Now we know, and I've said it before on this show, God is the number 1 advocate for self-development. And self-development starts with self-awareness. And if that tool is out there, I say go ahead and use it, because the more you know about yourself, the more you are equipped to face all the trials of life that are going to come at you. So be open to it, and look out for somebody that is qualified in the field. I'm not saying seek out Dionne Warwick or any of her psychic friends, and not everybody who say they can offer you that service are on the up and up. So do your research, all right? Because wisdom is something we got to use in this life, right? And also on this life and on this walk with God, I know loving God can be easy. Trusting God can be hard. But I believe we can all get there one step at a time on this Christian walk. I'll see you next time.
Walk with me, talk with me. What you know about God? Will He ride with me? Come and open my eyes for me. Hear my story. Show me more what's in store. And once more, listen, homie, can you walk with me? Talk with me. What you know about God? Will He ride with me? Come and open my eyes for me. Hear my story. Show me more what's in store. And once more, listen, homie, can you walk? Can you walk? Let's walk.